Welcome to Ask Earl Anything, number 29. Glad to have you with me today. We have a few questions today. Remember, your questions make the show. Just a couple channel update things. I'm going to be trying to back off a few videos each week, maybe just a couple. I'm wondering if I got too much saturation going on these days, so you may see a little less next couple weeks. I'm also going to be working on trying to get out some even better video content, so that's one of the things I'm working on. Anyhow, Ask Earl Anything is going to continue to stay in this format. Nobody bid on my idea to send me some video questions, so this really is my format. This is the thing that works for me. Some of my friends are jumping into the video chat world and doing the video chat online live streaming world, and I don't think I'm going to jump into that initially, at least not the way they're doing it right now. I am planning on being on Jeff Holden's show on September, I believe it's September 2nd, Sunday night, September 2nd. It hasn't been announced yet, so I'm pre-announcing Jeff Holden's show, but Jeff and I are going to be doing one of those chats. It's on his channel. It's his show, and I'm going to Skype in, and that'll be kind of an interesting, I don't know what it's going to be, okay? It's going to be kind of hard to beat what Beats by Jay and Jeff did the other week when I watched that show. That was excellent. Jeff really has a nice style. So does Jay. Jay's got a really nice style, too, of doing the chatting and dealing with everything. Really, two guys are really good at this stuff. So I'm going to continue to take your questions. So your questions make the show. The more questions I have, the longer the show goes. And let's start right off with our first question for this week. So this week's first question comes from AR drummer Adam. And he has a question. Have you ever cracked any cymbals? New ones, only owned by you, this is, of course. Used ones can be easy to crack if they have already been damaged. Well, first off, Adam, I never buy damaged cymbals, okay? So any used cymbals I've gotten or cymbals I've gotten from friends have been thoroughly examined before I bought them. I'm not buying cracked stuff, and I know how to look for cracks. Have I cracked cymbals? Yeah, I've cracked cymbals. Unfortunately, some of my worst cracked cymbals were early on in my career, in my life. My first Zildjian, A-Zildjian, 16-inch thin crash, my very first crash cymbal, I cracked probably at about 17 years old, probably because I was smacking through the cymbal. One of the big problems with crash cymbals is coming down on a crash cymbal. You want to hit it with a kind of a glancing blow. So even if you're coming down, the stick's coming off of it. But cracked cymbals happen all the time. Now, this stack right here is a perfect example. This is I bought this cymbal new from Guitar Center, but was far from new when I bought it. This stack over here has got a 16-inch traditional on it, and I've talked about the Peisty traditionals. This already had a bend in it, and the reason I bought it from Guitar Center, it was $70. It normally goes for $300. That alloy is expensive. So I bought it for $70, and when all was said and done, I used it for a long time, and then one day I was hitting it, and I cracked it, and I've kept the crack in it. Now, there's different ways of dealing with cracks. Some guys like to drill holes in cracks, and I have done that. As I've gotten older in life, I've realized that sometimes drilling that hole doesn't really save it, okay? So I decided not to do that, and I'm just letting this cymbal die a natural death. You know, it's going to die one day. I have another cymbal I bought. This is a Sabian HH sound-controlled 18-inch. I bought it to replace one I had when I was younger. My friend Pat O'Donnell, who I've talked about many times on the show and in videos, has the original cymbal. This one I bought used from somebody. I bought it used from a guy in Coral Springs that had no cracks in it. And then one day I looked on the edge and had a slight little crack on it. And I remember where I did it. It was playing hard in church again. And just like this one, okay, I have chosen not to drill the hole on that cymbal. It sounds fine. I've used it in a few videos. I don't use it as my everyday crash. It's kind of a crash ride anyhow. It's a really nice kind of jazz type cymbal. And I think with that little crack and the amount of time I play it, it's not one of my regular cymbals. It's probably going to last a long time with that crack. It's probably not going to move very far. So I have cracked cymbals. Usually the cause of the crack is the way you're hitting the cymbal and how hard you're hitting the cymbal and how you come down on the cymbal. Has a lot to do with cracking cymbals. I haven't cracked a lot of cymbals. One of the worst things I cracked was a hi-hat cymbal. A friend of mine had a set of 602 Sound Edge hi-hats, which eventually became my 602 Sound Edge hi-hats, by the way. Because the church that we bought the kit from him, the church bought the kit from him, came with the hi-hats, and eventually that church kit came to me. I told that story a while ago. Anyhow, I had these 14-inch 602 Sound Edge hi-hats with a little crack in it, and I knew who put that crack there. It was me using it as a crash cymbal. So hi-hat cymbals are not good crash cymbals. It's to bash on. Plus, you're trying to get a lot of sound out of a 14. 14s aren't going to give you a lot of sound. I've had 14-inch crashes, and they sound really cool. They're almost like big splash cymbals almost. But for a while there, I really liked that sound. But I would say today the lowest cymbal I have, the smallest cymbal I have as a crash is a 15 AAX, and I don't use it very often. But it's a quick crash. Very nice studio crash. Yeah, if you do get a crack, you can, especially if you get one in the center here, you can make big holes and that'll hide your crack cymbals. I know guys that have done that. I actually have one of those, my friend Steve Dupree's. It's on the bottom of this stack over here. So, anyhow, the cymbals I've cracked the worst have been Wuhan Chinas. Wuhan Chinas, I've actually got 3 broken Wuhan Chinas that are really cracked really badly. So I would say be careful with the Wuhans. The Wuhans are a brittle, dense metal, and if you hit it the wrong way, you will crack them. And when they just go flat, and they sound like garbage. They're just terrible. They don't even sound like garbage, because what you want in a China cymbal is something that sounds like it's dark and garbage can like, but you don't want it dead. So, or maybe you do want it dead. That might be the other thing, because everybody wants this sound now. This is the new sound. This has got my Paiste 16-inch signature thin China on it with a 11-inch Noiseworks splash. So that's the splash cymbal that's over here. And it was designed to go on an 18-inch dark buzz China, they called it. I don't have the 18-inch dark buzz China, by the way. But anyhow, Adam, that's kind of where that goes. So I have cracked cymbals. Not a lot, but mostly crash cymbals, but a couple strange ones too. So to boot. Crashes and Chinas. All right, my next question comes from Steve Anthony. It's his first time he's going to actually ask a question. And it's a quick question. Have you thought about doing a how to choose drumsticks video? Because there's drummers out there looking for the perfect stick. Now, this is not going to be my how to choose the perfect drumstick video. I have done a couple things about drumsticks, but and I have a video out there that may address some of this. But what I will tell you about choosing drumsticks for me is I need a stick that's not longer than 16 inches. And the reason for that is if it's longer than 16 inches, it feels weird in my hands. I do occasionally play one that's about 16 and a quarter, but I get jammed up on it all the time. So what I look for in a stick are sticks that are weighted similar, okay? And I like ones that are weighted a little bit heavier in the front end. So when I'm in a drum shop, if I get to play a pair of sticks, I will actually look for the ones that are pitch paired. They sound similar they have a similar sound. Like there's always a little difference. Or piece of wood, it's better. You try to pitch match it, and you also want to For me, I want to feel how heavy it is in the front end. That's what I'm looking for. Now, I will tell you, you can get pretty crazy with this stuff. You can get to the point where you weigh your sticks and you want to know how much your stick weighs. You put it on a scale. And I actually did that with, I got a package of Guitar Center seconds. I think they were Vic First seconds. And the sticks were actually Steve Gadd sticks. They're exactly the Steve Gadd stick without black on it. No black paint. And I weighed them. And the weight variance on those sticks, because they were in that bundled package, varied from, I think, 36 grams to 52 grams. And I chose all the ones that were around 48 to 52 grams. Those were the ones I picked because I wanted the heavier weighted sticks. The ones that were below 48 grams were too light for me. Come to find out, other drummers do this. I never did that before. I just happen to have a scale that I weigh cymbals on, and I tried it, and it actually works. So I was talking to Mike Frisano one day, and Mike Frisano told me about him getting crazy and weighing sticks and writing the little numbers on the sticks. I did that with those sticks, so I knew which ones were which. So you can get pretty crazy with drumsticks, okay? But for me, I'm looking for taper. I'm looking for a stick that feels nice in my hands. I'm looking for one that's not too thin and not too thick, okay? And 5A seems to be about the size, the thickness I like, and the weight I like is a 5A drumstick. Now, 5B's got more power. You're going to get a thicker stick. And if you get up into some of those large sticks, you're talking about marching sticks, it's a whole different thing. That's a heavier weight stick. They're usually longer too, by the way. But different sticks have different vibes. And when I do the drumstick video, I will go into a whole bunch of different sticks because there's sticks with small beads, there's sticks with big beads, there's sticks with long oval kind of beads. There's some that are flat beaded. There's some that are really thick, some that are really thin, and they all sound different on a cymbal. Okay? And with that said, let me go grab a couple sticks because I didn't come over here with them. Okay. This is one of 3 stick bags I own. By the way, some of these are mallets, so it's not my main stick bag. Let's see what crazy sticks I do have in here. I've got marching sticks. We won't go into that one though. All right, this is a more jazz-oriented stick. This is a Peter Erskine stick. Listen to the difference between a small ball and a 5A acorn. Quite a difference, right? This is a Hickory 5A. That's actually a, here's another one. This is a recording. This is a Vader recording, which is a little bit longer than I liked, but I bought them because I like the little balls. Different vibe, right? Let's see if I got any other ones. This is a maple stick with a really small bead. This is kind of like a Rogers 2S, the old days. Maples. So the bead does affect the sound. This is one of those Gadd sticks. I don't know if I got a number on the bottom. It's got a dot, so I didn't write the numbers, but this is one of those sticks. This is one of the Gadd copies. So a cymbal can sound completely different depending on the stick you got in your hand. And I don't have any of the little jazzer sticks, but they're always interesting. If I had one over here. That's the maple. Oh, this is the traditional Gadd stick. By the way, this is the Gadd. This is the other Gadd. So they got a little different sound, but I'm telling you, they're the same darn stick. Just one's painted and one's not. The beads are really close, but these are seconds. I like the sound of the gad better. Anyhow, so one day I will go into all these sticks and we'll take a look at them and really go through some of the other bag of sticks. There's another bag of crazy sticks. So anyhow, hope that answers the question, Steve. Thank you very much for the question. All right, my next question comes from Matthew Jackson. Now, by the way, Matthew Jackson is CCM drummer. And CCM drummer, some of you guys know CCM drummer. I'm not sure you're all friends with him. He's actually a really cool guy. I like him a lot. We have a lot in common. I've played a lot of CCM music in my day. Matthew did an interview with me. He wanted to talk about drum cages in church. You have to go to his channel to find the interview. I am on video, but when you got to watch it to see how I'm on video. Okay, that's all I'm going to say about that. But he asked a very interesting question. He said, why are triple flanged hoops called triple flange? Okay. Did some research for you, Matthew. The original drum hoops that came on a snare drum, okay? This is a triple flange hoop, by the way. This is a triple flange. The original drum hoops just had a straight edge and went straight down on the hoop of the flesh hoop of a calf head back in the day. And then they had these little clamps that clamped on the straight edge. And those are called a no flange or a straight edge or a single, it's just a single hoop, okay? Some call them stick chopper hoops. The double flange was when it had the one bend and then a straight up. That was the real stick chopper, because the one bend starts here. This is your first flange. So when you make that first flange over, that's flange number 1. And then to the second flange, which is straight, that's a double flange hoop. The reason why this is a triple flange hoop is it's got a bend, it comes up straight, and then it bends over backwards. And that's what makes it a triple flange hoop. So it's got a kind of the curve that sits on the head, goes up straight, and then bends back over. And this bend back over ends up not destroying your stick, unlike a straight hoop. Now, if you look at these die casts, they've got a little round over on them, so they're not straight, so they're going to chop your stick up, okay? But there's quite a difference between a die cast and a triple flange. Now, Slingerland, I think the Ludwig Drum Company kind of invented the triple flange, I think. They were the first ones to use the term. Slingerland had to be different. So Slingerland put theirs over the front, and that became a stick saver hoop. Okay? So it's got a rounded to the front, stick saver. Rounded to the back is triple flange, and if it's straight up, but it's got this little bump, it's a double flange hoop. And if it doesn't have the little bump, it's just a metal hoop on a snare, on a head, that's called a single flange or a no flange hoop. Okay? So that's the history of triple flange. So triple flange has to do with the bends. I had to do a little research to figure that out, though, Matthew. That was a tough question you asked me. All right? Okay. The next question comes from Matt Osborne, another new subscriber friend. And he said, nice job, Hammer. Speaking of which, how did you get the nickname Hammer? You probably get asked that a lot. I'm fairly new to your channel. Thanks. All right, so this is for Matt. For those of you who've heard the story, you may want to flip to the next story. That's up to you. And I do tell stories differently, as you know. My name, The Hammer, goes back to a band I was in called Saved by Grace. It was 1987 or 88. It was right after we did the Nashville thing. It was probably 88. I bought a pearl brass free-floating snare drum, 3.5 by 14, and I brought it to rehearsal. And one of the things that happened in my Nashville recording session was the engineer kept asking me to hit the drum harder and harder and harder and harder on the snare drum. Play the hi-hat soft and play the snare drum loud. That was the big thing. Because the natural thing for most guys when they play drums the first time is to play something like this, where you play. Right? And that's what I was doing. So we were playing one of the songs off the record. It was. And the engineer comes out, whoa, wait a second. Don't play that way. I want you to play the hi-hat as soft as you possibly can and play the snare drum as loud as you possibly can and the kick drum. So he wanted me to sound like. He didn't want the hi-hat bleeding in all over the mics. So play the hi-hat quietly, snare drum loudly. Now that's an exercise to work on for groove guys. If you want to be a groove player, I would say practice these kind of things. Very simple, right? Practice it with a metronome too. It's always good to work with a metronome. But the key is to try to play this softer. Rock and roll, you want this kick and the snare to come out. So anyhow, I had that in my head. I came back from Nashville, and that's a whole nother story I've talked about on other videos. But came back, bought that Pearl brass snare drum, and I was cracking on it. And the lead singer turns around and goes, "Earl, can you stop hammering that thing through my head?" And I said, "What?" He goes, "That drum, it's hammering through my head." "Okay, Russ, got it. Want me to back off on it?" "Yeah, back off on it. I'm going to have to call you the Hammer." And that's where the nickname came from. Russ Scalzo, lead singer of Saved by Grace, called me the Hammer, and that became my nickname. And I ended up using it for the rest of my career. It's been the Hammer. That's where it's been. And it has to do with the backbeat, the way I play a backbeat. Pretty much that's where it comes from. So I hope that kind of explains the story and you get some other little side thing out of that. So, and my last question, it's been a quickie this week. My last question is from my friend Mike Frisano. And he knew I bought the new Vic Firth stick bass drum beater. It looks like a big fat stick with a ball on it. He wanted my review on it. And I'm actually going to put a little video over this so you can see what I'm talking about. It's the newest thing. It's called Vic's Kicks. It's on my bass drum beater right now. Okay? And the question was, what are your thoughts on the new Vic Firth stick mallet bass drum beater you just purchased? I want to check it out, but will differ if you report. So you're going to trust me. That's what you seem to be saying here, Mike. You're going to trust my input. Now, as a lot of you guys know, I've been using a square Zorro, which is really not Zorro's square beater, by the way. The first square beater for a bass drum was made by Promark. Okay? It was a square felt and a square wood. I've got a wood one square and I've got a felt one square. Okay, and I've been using the felt one on my main pedal. That's my favorite beater for this bass drum. Okay, the square beater goes back to J.R. Robinson, John J.R. Robinson. He's the guy that's been talking about using a square beater for a long time. Promark got rid of him years ago. Danmar picked it up. Zorro, the drummer Zorro, used to play with New Edition and a bunch of other people, Lenny Kravitz and stuff. Zorro had Danmar make a square beater for him. Okay? So Zorro came back and had the square beater with his name on it. I got one of those. I love the beater. Great beater. So that's what this is up against. It's come up against the square beater. To be honest, here's what I like and don't like about it. First off, it's a little bit less weight than the square beater, believe it or not. The square beater's got a little bit more top end on it, okay, the top weight. So the weightiness. The square beater, you want to hit the bass drum square. That's the whole key to that whole thing. Now, what I've done to my bass drum since the last time, and you really can't see it, is I put the bass drum, my 20, on a riser. So I have a riser on my 18-inch Gretsch bass drum, little Gibraltar riser. I put a riser on it. As soon as I did that, the square beater was no longer squaring it perfectly. So switching this beater helped me with that. What that does is, with the 20, by putting it on a riser, now I'm hitting dead center in the head. And by the way, the new head on this bass drum is an Evans 56 calf tone, okay? It's the calf tone series EMAD. And I'm digging it. I'm really starting to dig this head. This head's kind of cool. I always like EMAD heads. It's one of my things. I like Remo Emperors or Remo Ambassadors or Remo Vintage A's. And by the way, I just bought Remo Vintage A's. I've just got 2 heads on back order. One's a 13 and one's a 10. So I'm waiting for that before I change the heads. But I put the Evans 56 on here. I really like it. Nice sounding head. As far as the Vicks Kicks goes, I was a little disappointed in the weight. I thought it was going to have a little more weight to it because it looks like this big thick stick. So you think it's going to have some serious weight to it. It didn't add that much weight to the beater. It's actually quite light, all things considered. So probably the steel rod doesn't go all the way to the top is what I'm saying. Okay? That's my guess. Because it really doesn't feel that heavy. So that's my only thing I would say about it. Other than that, I like it better than most of my round ball felt beaters. And it is a round ball more than that rounded felt. It's like a little round ball up there. So they could have squared it or something. I don't know, made it a little bit fatter at the top for me. I would have dug it. But it is almost as heavy as the square beater. So it's a little bit heavier than a regular beater, but it's not as heavy as that Zorro beater for some reason. That piece of block of square felt really has a little weight to it, so it has a little more throw as far as I'm concerned. But it is heavier than the other beater that's next to it, because when you see the picture, you'll notice that that beater's backed off a little bit, so it's pulling back on the spring a little bit more. Other than that, the amount of time I've been playing it, it seems like a really nice beater. So I'm not sending it back by any stretch of the imagination. Is it worth 23 bucks or 22 bucks, whatever I paid for it? Probably, you know, if you want a different sound. But I would say go get a Zorro beater, Mike. Get one of those square ones. They're the bomb. Definitely are the bomb. Try one of those. I have the other Vic Firth too, the one that's the little rounded ball. It's got a rounded and flat. You flip it over. I like that too. That kind of gives you that flat thing. But again, it doesn't have the weight of that square beater. That square beater has some meat when it hits a head, especially when it hits it flush. It's really a nice vibe. So, anyhow, that's this week's show. Thank you for watching Ask Earl Anything. Your questions make the show. I look forward to next week's show. Next week's show will be my 30th episode. So 30 episodes of Ask Earl Anything. So I look forward to getting some great questions. Thank you to everybody that contributed this week. Some of the newbies that have come in and contributed questions. I really do appreciate all the support on my channel. And be looking out for me on Jeff Holden's channel soon, doing a one of his Will Drum for Food video chats on a Sunday night. We don't know where that's going to go. Jeff gets to call the shots, but I'm sure we'll go some different places. Look out for the CCM drummer Matthew Jackson video interview of me talking about being in the cage, because that's pretty much what we talked about, and playing at church. And thank you again for watching Ask Earl Anything.